Welcome to this recording. In this recording, we're going to focus on how to do cost shifting, cost cutting, and then ultimately roll into the concepts of what we would do to build a revenue budget. A little bit about what we're going to work through in this scenario is we're going to have 100 patients that we deliver service to. It doesn't matter really what service we're delivering right now. For 100 patients, it's going to cost $1,000 per patient. Later on, we're going to talk about more how to be eloquent with these costs, but just to get this started. So right now, we're going to have 40 Medicare patients, 15 Medicaid, 10, 20, and some self-pay patients. So our two objectives are, one, what should be our pricing for this program to cover the costs, which are going to be about $100,000. And then if we're capped at charging $110, how much cost would be needed to break even? How much cost will we have to pull out of the program? So a little bit goes to, here's what we've talked about the patients themselves. And then over here, we're going to talk about how we get reimbursed. So for each Medicare patient, we're going to get $850. Medicaid's $900. Managed care A is a full charge, whatever we charge minus 20%. So in essence, 80% of what we charge. The managed B we're going to talk about a little differently and just say we get paid on a capitated basis, $700 per member per year. Right now we're going to act as if this is the only service they get for us, which isn't probably realistic, but for purposes of learning. And then all self-pay patients are not created equal. There's self-pay patients who have the ability to pay in due. They pay full charges. There's people who have the ability to pay but don't. That's bad debt expense. And then there's people who don't have the ability to pay, and we call them charity. So we've divvied up those 15 patients, a third, a third, a third. But I've posted the Word document. You can use that for kind of your waypoint. And now let's go over to the Excel sheet. In this example, let's kind of go over here first. Let's just plug in down here. So what we're trying to say here is let's change the patient. So we've got 40 Medicare, 15 Medicaid, 10 managed A, 20 managed B, and then we see we split the privates up there. So here's 100 patients. Right now the cost per patient is $100, so we're taking that over here to say it costs $100,000 to run the program. So what we're trying to say here is if we charge $2,000 a piece, we're going to generate $2,000 in charges because we all have to charge them the same. So 2,000 times 40 is 80,000, times 15 is 30,000, 10 is 20, 20 times 2 is 40, 10, 10, and 10. So that just shows the charge breakout. And then here from your sheet, we've just added in what we're going to collect. So remember, the Medicare patients are going to pay us $850, Medicaid $900. Managed care would be 20% discount, so 80% of $2,000, $1,600. That managed population $700, and then the private at $2,000. The reason I highlighted some of these in green is to show, yes, we're treating 100 patients, but only 15 of them are not in a fixed base of reimbursement. So let's stay with our example. We're going to charge $200,000, and we're going to actually collect $87,500. So we're a little bit short on what we need to make by $12,500. So we need to go back and adjust our price point. So if we charge $3,000, looks good. We've covered our costs. We've got a little extra. So we can just go back in and pull that back down to say we're getting closer. And you can see here I'm just ranging in on kind of playing with the computer to say what do we need to charge to break even on the program. So here we've got about $6. That's great. Our average charge per patient to break even on this sample would be $2,960. And if you watch what happens, I want to kind of put that number down here so we don't forget it. Let's go back to our 2,000. So I want you to watch what happens here. See this number that stays? I'm going to put it in. I'll put brackets around it. Irregardless of what we charge, that number's not changing. This number's not changing, and this number's not changing. The only ones that are moving are these here in green. Let's do that again just because it's fun. See? So here, in answer A to that problem, we would say we've got to charge $2,962. Well, let's say that's outrageous. People aren't going to pay that. We can really only charge, let me clean that up, 1,100. So then that says, okay, we're going to generate 110 in charges. Our collections from that are going to be $75.80. And our costs are this. So your answer B over here is going to be that we need to cut $24,200 dollars out of this program. So really kind of simple. That kind of shows how what cost shifting is more the commercials have to pay when there's less reimbursement. Now let's go down here and let's change payer mix, because there's a couple things. You have three elements you can change. One, you can change what you charge the patients, and so we saw there's kind of the law of diminishing returns. B, you can change what you the costs it takes you to run the program. So since we've got to deal with that, we'd have to somehow get this program to run on, Here we're trying to figure out how we can run that program instead of $1,000 per patient at $758 per patient. And then another thing you can do is sometimes try to change your payer mix. So let's see what would work. If we drove more patients here, let's say 40 here, and drop this down to 10, then we don't have to cut quite as much in that program. Let's say let's go 50 here. We really don't get much from these people. And let's swing a little bit more up here. Then we only are having to cut out 15,000. So that's just kind of the third lever over there of how you can change your patient population. So I know that was a lot. If you're watching from home, you can freeze the screen. A lot of people I know like put the screen video up on an iPad and then shift over to work on it on their laptop or PC. But let's also go and look at those key steps. What we did was we take volume, figured out what we wanted to charge, and then we knew what we could collect to get our net collections over here. We're going to apply the very same elements on a much bigger scale to building a budget for a healthcare system. So the first thing we're going to do, and this kind of ties back to this example down here, is we're going to build a revenue budget. Step A, we figure out our volumes. We're going to talk about that in a minute. B, predict our charge points, what we're going to charge here. Predict our payer mix, and then map out our reimbursement. And we've made a couple of assumptions. A big thing in the finance world, it's okay to assume. A lot of times we're trying to put pieces together for a puzzle we don't have all the answers to. So the key thing we do is detail our assumptions. At least we've written down why we thought something at the time. Very similar to establishing a diagnosis for patients. We write down what were we thinking at that point in time to help us flip over to this understanding. So here, very similar to what you just saw. And let's go through where these numbers came from. It's been pretty flat, so we're going to budget this many more admissions unless somebody tells us why, discharges. Here we've been growing a little bit incrementally in a skilled nursing, so that's reasonable. Our rehab discharges are growing. Our home health has kind of declined here, so we're going to keep that flat. Our emergency visits are increasing, and our outpatients are increasing. So we're just kind of making some assumptions there We don't know exactly, but it's a reasonable guess. Same thing, trending payer mix. In year one, you can see we're seeing more Medicare, more Medicaid, commercial has died out, more of that discount kind of coming in, or I'm sorry, leaving us, and more of that capitated program and bad debt and charity staying about the same. So then based on the information from your seat, we have what we charge. And remember, we charge irregardless of the ability to pay. That's why they're all the same. But our reimbursement's less. So here, for skilled nursing for Medicare, we're going to get paid $10,000, Medicaid $12,000, commercial $30,000. So this chart is just kind of putting the various elements in there. We'll come back and talk about this capitated program in a minute. And then down here, so it develops how you develop a revenue projection. So before you get confused, it's very simple. It just moves off what was your budgeted acute admissions times the payer mix times what we're charging for Medicare, builds that cost in. So it's the same thing for everyone. It just moves across. Same concept. What's the gross budget? What's our payer mix differential? And then what are we charging? And they're all the same, so that doesn't have to move over. The next step you do is figure out how much you're going to get reimbursed. This is where we're going to get different answers. So we take, again, what's our volume, payer mix, and then what's our expected reimbursement to generate expected income by payer. And you can see all these formulas in there. And I'm going to post this spreadsheet for you to look at as well. So it basically says for this, you're going to charge Medicare $96 million. They're going to pay you 31 or about 33%. Medicaid's going to pay 37, managed 60, this funky capitated rate 75, bad debt about 18, charity nothing. So in reality, we're going to charge $332 million and probably collect about 144. That means we're going to write the rest of it off, or the 200,000 thereabouts. So taking all that, and I've color coded it here to say this is what an income statement is going to look like that we're starting to learn about and you're getting familiar with. So you can see the color code. Our total revenue is 332. We're going to adjust off our contractuals because we're not going to collect these things. We're not going to have any collections for charity. And we got a little bit that we have to write out for bad debt. And the big part is to see that this part for our net patient services totals what we were thinking up here. The purpose of that was to share with you just kind of the constructs. So you learned a bunch of concepts there. You learned the difference of cost shifting, that different payers pay for services to different patients. But you learned a couple rules. We charge everybody the same, irregardless of their funding source. We recognize that self-pay patients either have the ability to pay and do, have the ability and don't, bad debt expense, or don't have the ability and we write them off as charity care. And then you saw those fundamental building blocks that then lead to the development of a big budget piece that we'll talk about later. So